DNT.
So you should get an email shortly, if that does not work for you.
Recording in progress.
Okay, hello. Welcome and thank you for coming to our 5th meeting for dealing with organics in Del Norte County, and specifically we're focusing on composting at this meeting. We'll have a few errands to do before we get into the meeting, but I want to thank all our presenters in advance for coming and contributing your knowledge and expertise and perspectives on how we can develop composting in our county. We'll start off with if there are public comments beyond the main subject of the meeting. Now is an opportunity to address the Solid Waste Task Force. Seeing none. Oh, okay, we have one. Oh. Oh.
Byproducts and creating like fish emulsion or bone meal and stuff like that, and then facilitate that to offset these synthetics that are poisoning the whole watershed. And then biochar is like something we should be creating. I don't think anybody's actually doing that in our county, but we have all that the forest product for biochar. And that's something, again, that needs to build the soil in the Smith River watershed to help them to transition away from the poisons and synthetics. So I'm trying to make sure that that becomes a focus, especially because we're talking about reclaiming things that are normally just thrown away in the composting process. So those were the two main things that I wanted to talk about, like how can we make that happen quickly, and then how can we get it into Smith River to where it's easily accessible to the lily bulb farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we will be discussing biochar a bit at this meeting. The fish byproducts, to my understanding, the dump bins at the harbor are currently being dumped. It was going to Christian. Are they going out to your? Yeah, I don't know how that ball got dropped, but currently our fish waste is being dumped, sent to the landfill, and that's not a good thing. So that is certainly a subject for addressing organics, getting organics out of the waste stream. Anything further? Okay, well, we can start off with introductions. I'm Craig Strong, current chair of the Solid Waste Task Force.
Kira Seymour, Task Force member, Assistant Director of Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority.
Joel Wallen, I'm with Hambro WSG. I'm the vice chair.
Chandra Ordway, Waste Zero Specialist with Recology.
John Perry, Recology General Manager.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Langto. I'm with the Del Norte Tribal Lands Community Food Council, and we are facilitating this meeting today along with Aya Mahan, my program director.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, the Food Council is helping facilitate these meetings in partnership with the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, as well as the task force, the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority Task Force, through a grant from CalRecycle. So super excited to be here, and I will pass it to Ted.
Thanks. Ted Ward, Director of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. Happy to host these meetings if you haven't been here before. In general, what we're trying to do is look at different ways to manage organic materials, including yard debris, food rescued items, and how to keep those materials as local as possible and manage them so that we're reducing our greenhouse gas impact. So thank you all for coming today, and I'll pass it along.
Yeah, this is just a general introduction of your name, your organization, or community. And we do have a question prepared for today, and that is, are you currently composting, and why or why not? You can keep it brief.
Okay, I'm Todd Garrett. I'm the Garden and Food Resource Coordinator for Open Door Health Clinic. I just started, and so I'm still learning into that question, but program-wide, we do. Right now, the Del Norte facility is not operational.
Good morning. My name is Amber McAdams. I work at Del Norte Tribal Lands Community Food Council, and I personally compost myself at my house. I have been for over a decade now, mostly because we have a garden that keeps growing. And it's just beneficial for us to utilize that as a resource rather than spend a lot of money at the store with a less par quality. We also started a composting system at our local food forest as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber.
So Alicia Williams, a community builder. I'm just independent and I do some consulting, and I don't compost because I don't produce that much waste and there's bears. So I don't compost, but I used to back before when I had like a large garden, but now we just don't produce that much waste anyway. So.
Hello, I'm Angela Gray, Community Education Coordinator for the Del Norte Community Food Council. And so I do compost. I compost at home, and I do that because it reduces the amount of trash I have to haul to the transfer station.
Good morning. My name is Robert Ford, Tribal Resource Specialist with Toledini Nation, and I do compost.
Cassandra Grimm, Del Norte and Tribal Lands Community Food Council, and I do compost at home.
Hello, I'm Roman Worthy. I'm the Food Sovereignty Program Coordinator at Toledini Nation, and I compost at home for my personal garden and do some at work as well, working with Robert.
Good morning. I'm Patricia Coble with the Del Norte and Tribal Lands Community Food Council, and I compost at home.
Hi, Oni Shaw and Julie Campbell.
Hello.
Residents of Crescent City now. We do compost at home. I've been composting for many years. We're prior master composters down in Santa Cruz before we moved up north and lived in Brookings for a gazillion years and then relocated here. And looking forward to hearing what's going on.
Thank you.
Hi, Tara Balden. I'm with the Yurok Tribe. I am the new pollution prevention program manager, taking over for Koya. And we do have a lot of needs for composting. We have a lot of future plans, and we are currently trying to get a lot of stuff online currently.
Good morning. My name is Dan Gray, county resident, along with my partner, Lynn Sachs. And yes, we do compost in the backyard, but I will say that we have materials like chicken bones and rib bones and stuff that's got to go to the transfer station. And so, and we are aware of California programs that are happening in the urban area. And so we are just curious to see what the future may hold, especially with California regulations requiring or saying potentially requiring compost waste, stuff like that. So looking here to the future. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lynn Sachs, and I have fond memories. I became involved with the Food Council probably in 2010 when we had the people from Humboldt come and do the Master Gardeners program. So from that point, I became involved. I work with the Open Door Clinic with a lovely young woman named Jane Moran, and we both set up a science program for children during the summer sessions. And I used to serve on the Food Council and got the food pantry started. So there's a part of me that I thought, I need to get involved again, and I'm proud to be part of it, and that everything is going so well now, especially about the composting. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Mia Wapner. I work with the Yurok Food Sovereignty Program. I'm the Klamath Food Village Coordinator and run a community garden in Klamath. And we do have a composting system, but it's pretty basic. And we try to keep it as simple as possible. Right now, we have a lot of challenges with wildlife. And so we're mostly just doing like waste from the garden and green waste and browns, but it'd be really great to have some collaboration and make that system better. And I think that we're definitely moving towards that in the near future. So.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Woods, and I'm actually from Brookings, but I've been really interested for the past 10 years in helping coordinate some sort of community composting program up in Brookings because I suffer from like immense non-composter's guilt living in an apartment complex, and there's not really much to do with it. But when I did have land, I was composting consistently or just feeding it to my chickens and letting my chickens go from there. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in here today.
Delahan Aikwi, Necknow Paula Aubrey. I'm a member of the Tolwadini Nation. I currently work for the Yurok tribe as the Food Sovereignty Program Manager. I've been with the tribe for about a year. I grew up in Klamath. Composting is not something that I'm used to. It's not something that I've done myself personally, but I'm really interested in doing it. I've been talking about a lot for a long time with my home garden, just haven't done it. But other than that, for the tribe, we're definitely wanting to move into more like larger scale composting as well as edible food recovery. We have some grants that we need to do that. So hopefully with this, just going out and starting to build relationships with not only restaurants, but also like gardens, farms, anything that we can do to lower the waste. I think that that's something we need to, build a little bit more into our programming. But yeah, so not a huge composter. I'm learning, so I'm thankful to be here and thank you guys for having us as well.
Hi, I'm Christian Alexander from Alexander Dairy. I was in high school with Paula. I was her powder puff coach. So I'm the good to meet you finally, Joel, in person. I'm the resident expert of compost on our dairy. We do thousands of truckloads of compost that we spread on our fields, and we sell a very tiny amount, which amounts to quite a bit. And so we compost mostly Douglas fir shavings and our manure together, and chicken bones and all sorts of things as well. So I'll have a little presentation for you all here soon.
My name is Becky Crockett. I'm the district manager for the Del Norte Resource Conservation District. And we're just getting ready to expand the district countywide. And we have submitted grants, and we do have some money allocated for municipal composting, mostly looking at woody chips and stuff like that. Also, I was the person that developed the yard waste recycling and composting program for the Portland metropolitan area several years ago, which now is almost a multi-million-dollar activity. So like Christian, I'm prepared to give a little talk a little later, and I'd be happy to answer people's questions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melanie Cross. I work with the Community Food Council, and I'm in charge of the school gardens. So we are starting our compost project, and I'm scared.
Amazing. Thank you everyone for being here in this room collectively. I feel like there's so much knowledge and experience that we're all bringing. So I'm really looking forward to this meeting. I wanted, and there are a few people online. We'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. So if you're online, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and it will go straight into the mic system.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Heather.
Well, I can try going first. Can somebody give me a little wave if you can hear me out there? Sounds like it. Great. Hey, I'm Dane Tittman. I'm from the Del Norte County Resource Conservation District. I work with Becky, who spoke earlier, and I do a little home composting. I live up in Brookings, so I'm a little bit familiar with it, and I'm excited to see this meeting proceed. Thank you.
Go ahead, Heather.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Pardue, the environmental coordinator with Elk Valley Rancheria. Sorry I couldn't be there today, but we do have a current compost program, and we're looking to expand it more in the future. So real excited to hear from everyone. Thank you.
Stephen Gibbs.
Hello.
Hi, Stephen. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. I compost everything, and when I die, I plan to be composted again.
Great. Thank you. Chris Peters, I think, or C. Peters.
Well, my name is Chris Peters, and I work here at the Europe Food Distribution Program here in Clinton City, and I really don't compost right now.
Thank you. And then Dana Gill.
Hi, I'm Dana. I work with True North Organizing Network, and I'm working on a meat processing facility, and we're looking at creating a crawdad farm to deal with some of our solid waste management, or maybe hoping someone wants to partner with us on that idea. But I personally compost at my house because I have chickens and pine shavings. So.
Thank you.
All right. So here's our agenda. We're a little bit behind, but I think we can
Excuse me,
make it
Maya,
up. Yes.
I neglected to take care of a one
Yeah.
errand. Item 3 is approving our minutes of our last meeting. Have task force members all reviewed the minutes? So I would just be looking for a motion.
I make a motion.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thanks for that. And we kind of escaped the composting question as task force members. We'll just do a show of hands. Who composts at home? Okay, the center. All right, Aya, go ahead.
Great. Thanks so much. So here's just a little look at our agenda today. We're going to start by going over different composting approaches. We've broken it down into 3 different kinds today that we'll be discussing: backyard, community, and municipal composting. We'll look at some feasibility of that through some comparison charts, looking at the cost, space, equipment, and permitting needed. And then we'll move in to hear what's going on, and that will be an opportunity to hear from some of you on what you're doing in the community to be composting. And then we'll finish off by having hopefully a really lively discussion on what is feasible in Del Norte. And we'll do an activity where we break into 2 groups and kind of do some brainstorming and note-taking on community compost and backyard composting here in Del Norte. So with that, we'll start with just a few of these quotes that I wanted to make sure I think we all are probably aware. One came from the Cal Recycle Composting website, and that's food waste in landfills emits the climate super pollutant methane, which heats the climate 84 times more than carbon dioxide. Locals can fight climate change together and create nutritious superfood for gardens and landscaping in their area with a central composting site. And also this recognition that composting always helps in waste reduction and improves soil quality, but most importantly, it is a way to teach others regarding sustainable living and creating corresponding habits. This is an easy but exceptionally effective way to bring change for the better within the environment and paving the way for a better future in terms of sustainability. It helps us connect. We can look at our waste as this landfill, or we can really look at it as something that's bringing life back to our community. And people have been composting for a really long time. I found some of these quotes going back to Egyptian proverbs, and composting is not something new. People have been composting for a really long time. And so taking us back to that a little bit today. Uh-oh. I got an error message. Okay, there we go. So we'll start by looking at 2 different kinds of composting systems, aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic is really easy to remember that the breakdown occurs using oxygen, and that's really the difference between aerobic and anaerobic, is that aerobic composting is using oxygen and the air to feed microorganisms. It can look like composting in backyard bins or tumblers, piles, or windrows. The key features of aerobic composting: it generates heat, it reduces pathogens, it produces CO2, water, and compost. It does require turning and aeration. And if managed properly, it should have a low odor. The pros of it is you have faster decomposition, fewer odors and pests, and it's easy for small and community scale systems. Some cons is that there's a lot of manual labor and it needs turning and moisture management. Aerobic, you'll commonly see in our backyard composting systems, community sites. It's simple, it's low cost, and there's huge educational value. Anaerobic is a process that breaks down without oxygen and using anaerobic digesters with sealed tanks or covered pits. It does produce microgas and then a digestate, which is the nutrient-rich material that we all love. And it operates in sealed, low oxygen environments, and it's often used at larger sites. It captures renewable energy. That methane can be utilized as biogas. It can handle wetter moisture inputs. So in our area where we have a lot of rain, it's not impacted because it's a closed system. And it can be useful for tribal and institutional projects. It does have a much higher cost and require technical expertise. And if mismanaged, like with any compost, there is potential for odor. And it can be promising for tribal or regional use and energy generation and its waste reduction potential, because it can take more than an aerobic system in terms of being able to break down some bones and things like that. So as I mentioned, today we'll be really going over these 3 different approaches to composting. So we'll look at backyard composting, which is really for individual households or small gardens. It works for residents to be able to compost their food scraps and yard wastes using bins and piles, with the goal to reduce our household waste, enrich home gardens, and build composting habits. So I did kind of, I think, lost my site. So I'll just keep going. And backyard composting has a relatively low cost. It builds community awareness and personal awareness, and it's a great educational tool. We'll also dive into community composting, and the scale of this can be neighborhoods, schools, church gardens, community gardens, and we did put in agricultural and tribal as well for community composting systems. Multiple houses are essentially bringing their compostable materials to a shared location that is then managed by staff or volunteers at that location. And the goal is to support collective waste diversion and local soil health. And it builds community relationship. The cost is moderate, and it produces compost for the community. And then we'll look at municipal composting, which is these large-scale composting, oftentimes managed by city council, tribes, and potentially we put agricultural in here. And Ted, I don't know if you want to say otherwise, but we did include it because it is a larger process and system. And it can divert significant volumes of food and green waste from landfills. And it has a large-scale impact. It requires professional management, but it could support regional sustainability goals as well. So now I have this information on some different backyard composting systems. That was actually, I'll give some credit to one of our school garden coordinators who has been doing lots of research for our school gardens. But just looking, there's a lot of different kinds of backyard systems. There's bokashi buckets, which are fermentation buckets that are enclosed where you can add any food waste. It takes around 2 to 4 weeks for things to compost. There's indoor plastic worm bins that are really great for apartments, just like bokashi buckets as well for small spaces. The prices for plastic worm bins can vary from $30 to up to $400. There's certain needs. You need to have worms. You want to make sure it's odor controlled if it's going to be in your home, pest controlled. Make sure there's no meat, dairy, bread. It needs to be kept moist with a 3-to-1 brown to green ratio with compost within 2 to 4 months. There's outdoor raised bed worm bins, and these go straight into your garden and create compost right there, and it takes around 3 to 6 months. Then there's the classic outdoor compost worm bin. There's a tumbling compost bin. These are really nice. They keep things all enclosed and you just spin it to turn it. So it's a little bit less labor intensive. And then you have your classic 3-bin system, which obviously is going to take a little bit more space. And that can be an active compost that is actively composting, or you could just leave it as a passive slow breakdown. And then we can look at community composting systems. And today we'll be identifying potential sites, looking at some of the needed equipment and management models to success. These, for success, really take local compost leaders who are trained and ready to train others. They need to be covered in our wet climate, as well as for pest control. They provide an opportunity for repetitive place-based education so people can come and learn about compost. And there are startup grants and outreach required to get these started. And we'll go over that a little bit later. Some of my slides aren't working. Okay. Still missing some of my slides. And then we'll talk about municipal commercial scale management. And as we mentioned, municipal is like large scale composting facilities. And if for some reason the presentation, I'm wondering if you could share it through Zoom. We might switch over our presentation because we're missing slides that are important about municipal composting. But I did borrow this graphic from one of our previous meetings looking at municipal composting systems and the different kinds, utilizing community mulching, static piles, windrow. I realized another slide that got cut off was one looking at our resources. Give me 1 second. I think we're going to try to do some tech. Okay. Can we just share the Zoom and then we'll put that up for now? Thanks, Drea. Sorry about that, you guys. We just need to share the Zoom screen up. Oops. Okay, there we go. Yep. Okay, perfect. I was actually at municipal, but we'll just go back here. So today, looking at community. Oops. Let's just go through the community real quick. And we'll hear from some of our community compost leaders here in a minute. So I can just briefly go over this, but we're going to be looking at ideal sites, which are often community gardens, schools, tribal lands, our food forest, community centers. You want to make sure that there's access and safety, buffer zones away from homes or waterways, and Ideally flat, well-drained land with fencing and water access. There's different management models from volunteer run to partnerships to staff sites. And then also looking at infrastructure, you'll need oftentimes composting bays, basic tools like shovels, pitchforks, wheelbarrows, thermometers. You will have to have some kind of security with fencing, locks, gates to deter pests and illegal dumping. And then you could potentially upgrade with a chipper, a shredder, a small loader, aeration pipes, scales, things to help with the labor-intensive turning of the compost. And then educational tools are a key as well, with clear signs or posters showing what's accepted, how the process works. With some success factors being clear roles and responsibilities, ongoing education, record keeping, and regular turning and pest management with strong community ownership and local leadership. We looked at Amador County in the past and CNC Ranch, which was funded through a CalRecycle grant, and they established a community compost program at a local ranch, encouraging residents to bring their food scraps to the community garden for composting, diverting that waste from the landfill. And it was helping people at home who were not able to maybe utilize all their food scraps in their composting bins. And it helped them, as somebody mentioned earlier, reduce the attracting pests at their home. If you live in a place where you have bears, maybe composting isn't the right thing, but having somewhere to take that waste, and then supporting local climate action and community engagement as well. Just skip this slide real quick. And then municipal composting, as mentioned, is centralized high-capacity systems requiring major investment in infrastructure. So you might see a anaerobic digester as a municipal composting. We looked prior at this earth flow intermodal, which is a process that processes waste. And then if you go to that next slide, you can see the different feedstocks for municipal composting systems. These are large systems and oftentimes are expensive and require permitting. All right. And now we'll go through kind of comparing these three different backyard, community, and municipal composting. We'll look at the pros and cons of both, the different management and operation, the site need and risk, the cost and revenue for startup and operation, and then some of the timelines and regulations to each. So as mentioned, backyard is really our households, our individual homes. Community is more of these neighborhood, agricultural, school, and tribe. And then municipal is more city, county, tribal, water districts, huge, large producers. So the first thing we're looking at are the pros and cons. Backyard is low cost, easy to start, and great for gardeners. The con is that it's a limited scale, right? You can only do so much in your own backyard. But the other pro of backyard gardening is that there is no pickup required. And that itself, having a pickup for our composting in Del Norte County would be a lot of carbon just in the pickup process. So backyard composting reduces that piece of having to pick up or drop off. Community composting, a pro is it builds those relationships. It creates shared learning opportunity. On the flip side, the cons, it requires coordination, volunteers, and a lot of labor. Municipal, it's going to be able to handle large volumes of waste diversion. However, it's expensive and there's a lot of regulatory hurdles. And as mentioned, in comparison to backyard, there's a lot of carbon that goes into potentially picking up and distributing that compost. Looking at management and operations for backyard composting, it's about 1 to 2 hours per week versus community composting, which could be 5 to 20 hours per week. Versus municipal, you have to have a full-time staff there to take care of the processing. For The expertise, you need low expertise to start backyard composting. Maybe a little bit of guidance would be helpful if you haven't done it before. Composting on the community scale does take some moderate expertise and organizing. And then municipal composting, you have to have high expertise. And you can see the difference of equipment from just bins and pitchforks and some shovels to municipal, where you need loaders, grinders, aerators. Site risks and conditions. The space needs you can see for a backyard composting, or even someone who lives in an apartment that's using a worm bin. It can be just a small space need versus community, 100 to 2,000 square feet. We'll hear from some of our community composters and their space and what they're using, versus municipal. You need at least a half an acre. The zoning, there may be some restrictions for community composting versus with municipal, there are very high zoning needs with buffers and permits required. Risks, there's low to moderate for backyard composting, depending on the systems you're using. The picture I put there is a bokashi bucket underneath it. That's an enclosed system where there's really no pest issues if managed correctly. And then community composting, you can have odors and pests if unmanaged. And I think the biggest risk with municipal is the compliance, because you're held to very high standards. The cost snapshot, we can just look at this briefly, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, backyard is going to be cheaper per person versus a municipal system. Some revenue, you may have savings from your backyard, as we heard from some folks in the beginning. Utilizing your food scraps to make fertilizer for your garden is a lot cheaper than going out and buying that. On a community, you may have donations or small sales of compost. And then municipal, some revenue, you may have compost sales or tipping fees and things like that. But compared to the annual cost of operation, that would be very small. In terms of timeline and how long it might take to start getting some of these systems started, for backyard, you can have compost in 3 months if you start composting today. Same with community composting, municipal, obviously, it says here 6 to 16 weeks once that process gets started, but getting it implemented would take much longer than that. With permitting, there's no permitting required for backyard. Community, there may be some local permissions that are required depending on the space size. And then for municipal, there is extensive compliance required. For scale, you can, in your backyard, you can compost 50 to 500 pounds per year. Community compost could take up to 50 tons. And then obviously municipal can do up to 10,000 plus tons per year. So and now we'll just do like a quick overview of each. So for community composting, and a lot of this is review of what I just went over, but you can see the cost is low. The pros, it's really low cost and easy to start with minimal permitting or oversight needed. And it produces compost for home gardeners. It's a high feasibility for Del Norte and a great entry point for education and outreach. Next slide. For community composting, it requires coordination, volunteers, and contamination control. Some zoning or local health rules may apply, and you may have needs for fencing and pest management. But really, it builds community and shared ownership. It diverts more waste than backyard composting, and you can achieve really good quality compost with simple protocols. And I believe in Del Norte, this would be a promising mid-scale solution in alignment with our local food and garden networks as a great entry point for education and outreach. And then finally, municipal composting. Next slide. Is for large facilities. it's not currently feasible for Del Norte. Not to say that we can't revisit it, but the scale, cost, and permitting barriers are really high. And it has complex permitting and environmental review required, especially associated with odor, leachate, and different pest concerns. It requires ongoing staff and transportation logistics. So at our current state, it isn't really feasible. However, it is something that we can look into as we become better at composting in our community. So with that, I'm really excited to turn the meeting over to some of our presenters today that are going to share what they're doing here in Del Norte and what's going on in Del Norte. So we will go ahead and get started with Robert from Toloadini.
Oh, all right. Good morning. My name is Robert Ford. I'm a tribal resource specialist with the Environmental Division of Toloadini Nation. That job title has me wearing a few different hats, and one of those was starting up our composting initiatives. Can you go next slide, please? The original goal when I started about 8 months ago. And the original goal was super simple, and that was just to prevent some of our food waste from ending up in the landfill. And then from there, we diversify the program in producing higher quality compost, teas, and adding those to our food forest and our native plant nursery, and start growing some produce and whatnot. To get started, I started by just reaching out to all of the kitchens that are associated with the tribe, like our casino, our Head Start, Elder Nutrition Program, and Food Sovereignty Program, and just asked if I could pick up their food scraps, just all food scraps that are not animal products. And they all said yes. And I started collecting anywhere from 150 to 300 pounds a week of food scraps and bringing them to my compost windrows. Go next slide again. There's missing one. Oh, just one slide. It's all right. Just use your imagination. Turning 300 pounds of food scraps into, not just a hunk of rotting food was a little challenging. I started out by just simply mixing the food scraps with wood chips and covering it with cardboard. And that method worked until spring hit. And I'm pretty new to gardening and the area. So it just got completely taken over by invasive species, blackberries. I basically just made an invasive species garden in my first row. So that turned me to my second attempt, which was laying down a nice solid bed of cardboard and mulch to help prevent some of the weeds from growing up. And that worked a lot better, but without having a water source in the middle of summer for composting, my pile did dry out. And so that failure led me to my current methods, which is sandwiching my compost piles, as you can see in the right image, in just tarps and plastic that I've found around, scrounged for, and mixing those with my old dried compost pile. And it is working pretty flawlessly. The tarps on top is preventing all the bears and coyotes and crows from getting in, and the plastic bottom is preventing all the weeds from growing up. We also have other methods throughout the tribe, like a 3-bin system at our Head Start. The kids actually do that on their own. They add to it every day. And we also have worm bins and stuff scattered throughout the different offices. Other than those methods, I still have my fair share of challenges. As you can see in the bottom left image, just contaminants in our compost bins, cardboards, plastics, from the casino mostly. But I just sift through that whenever I dump my bins every morning. And my most recent challenges have come with harvesting. In the top left, you can see I've just been putting them in sandbags currently. And in the sifting process, I sift all my compost, and some of the sections of my compost have been taken over by ants. And obviously, you don't want just a bag of ant-filled compost. So I've just been avoiding those sections, but that leaves thousands of pounds of compost I'm just not using at the moment. And the other problem is worms. Since I don't have animal products in my compost bins, it's not exactly like a hot pile, and my piles are just full of worms. So come to harvesting, I don't want to just fill the bags with the worms and for them to die. So if anyone has any pointers there, that'd be great. But despite those two challenges, I'm learning a lot, and we are making steady progress. And I'm excited to keep refining the program and supporting the sustainability and the food sovereignty of the Tawadini Nation. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was awesome. All right, and next up, I believe I have the Community Food Forest and Amber McAdams and Cassandra Grimm.
Hello again, I'm Amber McAdams. I currently have a system at the Food Forest that we started just under 2 months ago. We have capacity to implement 7 compost piles. At the current time, we have 6 of them actually going, and as of this morning, we have our second finished pile. Each bay holds about a yard of material. And each pile takes a minimum of 30 days to complete, and it generates about half a yard of usable compost. So what starts out as a 3 by 3 by 3 of the material breaks down into half the size that's usable at the end. We also have capacity of using 3 large worm bins. They're about 3 by 3 by 2. We don't have them implemented yet because we don't have the amount of greens that's needed to accommodate for the 7 large bins and the worm compost. So we're facing that we need more greens in order to make our garden more successful. Trying to reach out to all the community. We have smaller systems available, so they could come and see if maybe one of those systems would work in their backyard. We got a tumbler system, and we also have a bucket worm system as demonstrations. It comes down to we need more hands-on laborers. It takes us a lot of time to turn these piles, to prep collecting the greens, and the maintenance of them. Also, having a long-term plan of a permanent structure would be beneficial, maybe an awning. Right now, rain or shine, we're out there. It's a little challenging being in the pouring rain, turning piles. Maybe even a permanent structure. Right now, we have the bales that we used for our harvest festival as our structure, and they're working extremely well. They only last so long, so we're still working out a system because it's so new. If we maybe it'll be an annual thing where we do a restructure with the bales, or maybe there'll be a more permanent structure where we have concrete as the base. The tools we use right now are a tarp, pitchfork, wheelbarrow, buckets, the lawnmower, and the temperature gauges. To make things easier for us, having a chip mulcher would help with the time that's consumed with the greens. Right now, we collect them all from the pathways, the perimeter of the food forest, any of the greens from the vegetables that we're growing that are no longer producing. We'll pull it, we grab the mower, we run over it, it's bagged, and then when it's broken up in those smaller pieces, it makes it easier for the composting to break down faster. And so just having that tool would make it less time consuming. Also using, if we have means from the community, I heard earlier about fish emulsion, biochar, eggshells, those kind of things we would welcome at the food forest. So we could also improve our compost with those added to it. Generally, there's one pile that needs turned daily. To turn the pile takes about an hour. To collect greens, with 2 people, it takes us about an hour. And to take all the temps, prep the space, mowing down the greens, cleaning up the space and the equipment, it's another additional hour. So generally, it's 2 to 3 hours a day to manage the food forest composting. To reboost our compost piles, it generally takes 7 buckets of greens. And so with having 7 piles, that is a lot of greens that we need and we're just not having access to at the moment. And to start a pile, in addition with the horse manure, we also use greens for that as well. And then it would be nice if we also had access to different browns. Right now we're using the bales as our browns, and we have access to wood chips up. And so that's an option as well. Just takes longer to break down. It would be nice if we could have maybe the fall leaves would be a nice addition to contribute to the composting as well. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Amber, I had a quick question. You mentioned that you are short of greens and also short of labor. Do you have any element of community outreach to try and get those things?
So with the greens, we've already had we had discussion with Wild Rivers Markets. DAR has a program where they run as far as the greens. They had a system already established and going, and they've been very welcoming to contribute to our cause because they think it's such a wonderful cause. It's just challenging because they had an existing system. So whatever I say, hey, can I get some greens? It's taking from whatever program that they already had established. And we are also in works with our school coordinator over at Crescent Elk with trying to orchestrate how we can get greens from the cafeteria over to our food forest, and that's in the very beginning stages. As far as volunteers, we do have volunteers that come in on a regular basis. It's a very labor-intensive job. So we don't have those type of volunteers that can turn piles. Thank you.
one other, yeah, come share. We have a really exciting pumpkin smash coming up at the Food Forest. I think Cass is really excited to share that.
Yeah, I am. So, obviously, this is only going to solve the need for green waste on a very short-term basis, but using the season and everybody usually has pumpkins for the holiday. And so the first Tuesday after Halloween, we are going to use our regularly scheduled volunteer work party hours to host a pumpkin smash at the Food Forest. So it's a great way for us to get food out of the out of the landfill, getting it to the Food Forest, getting us some green waste, and then by smashing the pumpkins, we are making that food waste nice and small so that the microorganisms can really digest it well and not take as long with the huge chunks of pumpkins. So please, if you cannot make it to our pumpkin smash work party on Tuesday, November 4th between 2 and 5, we would still like to welcome your pumpkins. So after Halloween, anytime between Halloween and 5 o'clock on election day, if you would like to drop your pumpkins off at the Food Forest, just inside either one of the two gates would be great. We can use a wheelbarrow and shovels to get them after you've dropped them off if we're not there when you're dropping them off. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, I'd like to invite Melanie Cross, our school garden manager.
Again. So this is all your fault, guys. You inspire us. I said to myself I was not going to do compost with the schools, and then a teacher said to me, I have 2 students who will really benefit from a project that is not reading and writing specifically, and she was starting to compost in her classroom, and it was full of fruit flies. And I'm like, okay, let me take over. So now I have a school-based project that it's beginning, and this is my pilot program with Crescent Elk. So I started with a science teacher and 2 students that I'm guiding on taking over this project. I want them to take over the project, not me. So I'm just trying to assist them in this process. We got Recology to donate the compost cans. We have Del Norte School District Nutritional Service supporting us, and they're willing to let us do whatever we want with whatever we get from the kitchen. And the students, the principals are also backing us up, and they want us to communicate with the different grades to teach them how to compost or how to select the food that can go in the compost. Who else is helping us? Oh, by the way, I wanted to thank Alexander Families because we received so much compost from them in previous years. Thanks to you in specific, I was able to grow food at Joe Hamilton for the first time because that soil was dead. So it's proven that it works. And right now, I'm not as prepared as Amber with the structure of my speech, but what we need, or what I think the students need, it's expertise. Every time I talk about this project, I'm super excited and somebody brings me down a notch. Are you gonna put, I don't know, if there's sauce on the vegetables, what are you gonna do with the food scraps that are not super clean? How are you gonna bring the bins back into the kitchen and being sterile enough to be inside the kitchen? How are you going to get enough browns, etc.? So there's so many things that I need to consider, and I think it will be extremely beneficial if we have one person who goes around the project with me and clarifies all the steps that we should follow so we can have a successful small project. We have, oh, thank you. We have last year, Marie Reed helped us to build a compost bin with her husband. So we have one bill is 3 spaces made with pallets, and I want to put wire in them so I don't have to be so concerned about rodents coming in. And I don't want to be so big as Amber. I don't want to have a project that requires 3 hours daily. I want to have something simple that the kids can make a lasagna compost project. And if we want to go farther in and experiment with a more label intense one, it will be one specific project. But I would like to start with the most simple way of composting. Also, in Food Forest, it was going to help me get the food from the cafeteria. But I realized that if I don't use the ones with mayo in it, it's very little amount of greens. So I need to figure out how to use the mayo in my compost. And I need help. We would love to have signs. We would love to have roof on our compost. We would love to have you come and talk to our students and introduce them to this project and make it something that stays in the Crescent Elk for as long as possible.
Thanks so much, Melanie. Next, we have Tara from the Yurok tribe.
Give us a second. I used these pictures from our last trip.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, we wanted to add a few photos to our PowerPoint, so we're trying to get that online.
Sorry, guys, we had to together another presentation really quick.
But yeah, so again, I'm Tara Balden with the Yurok Tribe Pollution Prevention Manager, and this is
Paul Aubrey with the Food Sovereignty Program.
Yeah, and we work closely together on food waste diversion, and we are trying to make it happen for the Yurok Tribe, and it has been successful in certain ways, and we're learning a lot. We recently closed out a grant while we're waiting for our PowerPoint to come up, but we had a grant to purchase an anaerobic digester for the food village in Klamath, and that took so neither of us were actually in the positions we are in now when this all started, but we were here at the end. So the program purchased the anaerobic digester through a company called EcoRich, and they're based out of the Netherlands. So yeah, you can go, let's go to the, yeah, perfect. You can go to the next one. And let's just go to the next one, sorry. So yes, this is the grant I was talking about. It's the EPA anaerobic digestion in communities. And we first got it, it was delivered last year, September of 2024. And because it came from the Netherlands, it was about 6 months of shipping. It came over on a ship, then it got stuck because in the ports because of all that stuff that was happening. And so it had a long trip to get here. And it finally got here last October or September. And then we had to wait for a few other parts to come. And then we figured out that it is wired in European wires. So now that is where we stand with it. But all that to say is we are getting closer to get this anaerobic digester up and running. And like I said before, anaerobic goes off of food, and it is has a tea basically inside of it that digests the food, and then it creates a biogas product that essentially will, for what we're using it for, it will run the pump house at the food village, the Minot Creek Food Village. And then the byproduct it produces, the tea that will be used in Mia's garden and hopefully given out to the community once we get enough established. And the whole point of this is to reduce food waste from the reservation and in the landfills. And we are partnered with the local school, the Omanok school that's right there at the garden site. And then we have been in communication with the other restaurants in Klamath. And then essentially by next year's Salmon Festival, our goal is to be collecting the food waste from the Salmon Festival and like reducing food waste as far, as much as we can into the anaerobic digester. And if you want to go to the next slide, I think we have, so that's a poster that I'd created for the community of Klamath when we first came out. It's kind of hard to read on here, but if you go to the next slide, we have some more pictures. So the shipping container, that is it. That's how it's housed. That's how it was sent to us from the Netherlands. And we had that concrete slab built there for it to sit on. And the next picture, the picture on top is what it looks like on the inside. That brown box is the generator that is now on the outside. I just hadn't taken some updated pictures. And then that tea I was talking about, that digestion is, you can kind of see it in the way far back of the container, but then that's an up close of it right there. And then if you go to the next slide, it will show, so that's a meeting we had out there with the folks from Eco Rich. They flew out here, and then we had hired a few local electricians and local plumbers that we've gotten involved here from Crescent City to help us get this online because it needs to be plumbed, needs to be hooked up to electricity. And then the other photo is the picture where the biogas is stored until it is then regenerated or reproduced into the generator that will be wired to the pump house.
And then I guess I will mention too that like with the electricity that is generated from it, we have like two options. We can either put it back into the grid, or we would have to have some sort of way to store it, which we do not have a way to store it at this time. So that's something that we need to figure out as well. So on top of having, electricity, you have to have plumbing, you have to have somewhere to store it. The garden in Klamath does not have electricity. We have a pump house from well water, and that's it. So currently we're kind of just operating on what we have. So this grant being written or wrote prior to either one of us starting was a little, I would say it was pretty ambitious because, we have limited infrastructure, which she can go over a little bit further in the next slides. But I just wanted to mention that. So we're kind of jumping into this project, especially with us being new within, I started within the last year. She's been into this position within the last year as well. And a lot of grants that were wrote from other people prior to us starting, which kind of creates this, we just have to jump in and just try to do what we can. So we're hopeful that it'll, we can get it online, but it's a lot of infrastructure issues for us. So that's kind of just where we're at right now. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about our limitations and future things that we're.
Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So I kind of already went over this. The limitations obviously is electricity, and the company of Eco Rich is going to hire, I specifically asked him to hire a local electrician here, one from Crescent City, so that we can help support our local economy to get this rewired, because as of right now, we cannot do anything until it is not in European wiring. So that's where we're standing. But we are still working on it, and we're not giving up. It's there. We have it here now, so we are going to keep trying to get this anaerobic digester up and running. And obviously, for the funding, we will need a full-time technician specialist that will be going around and collecting all this food waste, because we all live in bear country out there in Klamath. We need the food waste to be collected daily. We do have bear-proof trash cans that we will be giving those that participate with us, but we need someone that's going to be going there and collecting all of the food waste on a daily basis so we don't run into any issues like that. And then you can go to the next slide. For the future, I'll let Paula talk about this because she actually wrote these grants.
Okay. So this grant, primarily like when Koya was here, he would have wrote this grant, but he was here, but I kind of took over and wrote most of it. So we did receive this grant. It's the USDA Composting and Food Reduction Pilot Project Cooperative Agreement Program. So with this grant, initially we wrote it to focus on enhancing food sovereignty through anaerobic digestion, again, for 2 other locations in Witchpeck and in Watek. So we have 2 other, Watek is the least along, so we don't have like staffing there. We don't really have a garden space right now, but this grant was written so that way we could put in another anaerobic digester in Witchpeck and Watek. So we do have that funding, but we're kind of thinking about moving into more composting direction just because, again, we have those infrastructure issues at both of those locations, and it's potentially not feasible to do that. But this program primarily, I think, or doing just composting by itself wasn't something that initially they wouldn't really fund that per se. And so that's why we didn't write it for that. So we'll have to talk to the grantor and see if we can move into composting versus anaerobic digestion, just because we do have those limitations. So the goals with this project pretty much is, again, just to increase the organic waste diversion rate, and then to have some sort of systems for those, very far out rural communities that we don't really do a lot of food waste reduction. And I think it's something that we're trying to get into, but we're learning the hard way that you definitely have to have the infrastructure put in place prior to starting these like large, projects. But we're learning, so we'll get there eventually. And so we're moving along, and we'll see what happens with this project. This started in January, so I believe it's a 2-year grant. There's not a whole lot of funding in this grant for hiring a specialist, or hiring somebody to actually like really run that anaerobic digester or the composter. So that's always something that we run into, is just having the issue of funding, of being able to actually hire the people to do the work. Because me and Tara can't do it all, and neither can our coordinators because they have other jobs to do as well. So, but that's where we're at, and I'll let you guys go to the next slide.
Yeah, and I was just going to add on to that with this new grant that Paula was awarded. My goal now, running into the anaerobic digester issues we had with the first one, I would like to maybe go more towards a composter system that does food waste reduction and green waste. Because of the food villages, we do generate a lot of green waste, and then also in the communities doing the food waste reduction. So I will be doing a lot of research on a mechanism, machine that will do both, because the anaerobic digester is just food waste, and that is something that a lot of people do. So thank you.
Tara, I will send you a composting system that does food and green waste that we went over in one of our previous meetings. It actually is in a container similar to your anaerobic digesters, so they might look really nice together in a system. All right, next up we have Christian Alexander.
Howdy, folks, again. So, yeah, it's neat learning what everybody's into. And which you guys are all really passionate about. I live and breathe and sleep this time of year. In the spring, it's all about harvesting our feed and getting ready for winter. And in the fall, it's spreading compost, spreading manure, and getting ready for winter. So we're like, it's a cycle of preparation for farmers. So yes, I'm from Alexander Dairy. We've been here since 1992, since I was just about a year old when we moved here. I've been home from college for about 11 years and been running the compost side of things since then too. Let's see, you want to jump to some photos there? Cool. So these are photos I just sent over this morning. We spread about 2,000 truckloads of compost a year. Each load is 10 tons or 20 yards. Yes, it does break down about 50% from where it starts, volume wise. A couple rules of thumb I wrote here. So I've done some pretty formal trainings in Fresno and with UC Davis Extension and stuff. Carbon to nitrogen ratio is really important. So somewhere between 20 to 1 and 30 to 1. Cow manure can be pretty high in nitrogen. And so adding carbon to it's really important. We use sawdust and shavings, preferably shavings, but just because of the surface area meets better and allows more oxygen in there. And we get shavings at a rate of 5 to 8 loads per week of 100 cubic yard loads from Brookings. And so that's a great relationship. You can only compost Douglas fir shavings around here. Redwood does not. I'm sure most folks that have dealt with in the lumber industry or the timber industry know that. 50% moisture is a big important thing. So in the wintertime around here, it does get too wet. Covering piles is ideal. We plan, or our goal is usually to spread all compost before winter, so that you don't have leaching into the soil. And that's leaching into the soil isn't necessarily a negative thing. It's just all those nutrients are going right there, and our goal is to spread it out on the ranch and to get more growth for the rest of our crops. And so we'll run irrigation pipes over our windrows of compost. I also shared some photos and some photos of how we deal with our manure. Let's go back to the compost. I'll keep going over compost stuff. In the middle photo, you can see kind of our separator in the top corner, and the separator separates solids from liquids. The solids being the bed, and it flows on each of our dairies. We have a separator that brings the bedding and the flushed manure to a pit, pumps it up to the separator, separates solids from the liquids. Solids is what we start composting, and we'll even add in our chickens to it. That's where fish waste starts, is with the fresh manure or fresh solids there, and that for us takes about 6 months of turning. I carry a 3-foot and 18-inch thermometer with me. That's another rule of thumb here when it comes to turning compost. You want to turn the compost as the temperature just starts to decrease. That is to maximize speed up your time to keep those microbes building up, working hard. Back to on the 50% moisture thing, squeezing compost, squeezing the material that you've got. That's how you can tell if it's 50%. If you have any moisture coming out, it's too wet. If it doesn't stick together, then it's too dry. It's a real quick way to know. Let's see. So the temperature thing, 130 degrees for 15 days kills weed seeds. Our goal is about 145 degrees. Can kill more pathogens. Once you get into the 160 degree range in compost, you're cooking it too hot and you're killing a lot of beneficial stuff in there. Let's see. So composting, spreading of compost. That's again, it's in the fall. It's also the slow growth of our grass, and in most regions, that's when the sun's going down earlier. There's less daylight, And so that's the time then the grass can receive the compost and absorb the nutrients as the rains come. There in the bottom photos, you can see our manure ponds. That's another thing I've really been focusing on this year. We've got multiple ponds at each farm, and if you've seen in Smith River, we've been running a big orange tanker, 7,000 gallons that we're pumping this slurry into, and it's just magic for the fields. And so all of this is benefits and regenerative practices. Go ahead and go to the next photos. Just more examples of before and after there at first of kind of a trench that fills with manure before we pump it. And then we'll go and excavate it out with a backhoe or an excavator, and then get it back to a slurry about every couple of months. There's an agitator there with a cone on it. I just drove that across the temporary bridge the other day. And then there's the last photo is our big slurry spreader, that 7,000 gallon tanker. That's pretty magical. Go ahead and next photo. Or is there any more? That's it for me. Cool. Yeah, so carbon and nitrogen is really important. I am trained on composting animals. That was a big part of avian flu. We had to compost our 40,000 chickens. That was a pretty brutal week. That's a different subject, but the composting of chickens and watching that process happen is absolutely amazing. Within 2 weeks, you can't tell it was a chicken. Within a month and a half, you can't tell there was anything there, except the gizzards that have little rocks in them, like gravel. And so when we sell a lot of compost in the community, to any community gardens and churches, I generally had a policy. Yeah, we do that as a donation, no problem. But I always tell people the chicken bones are for free, so no extra charge on those. So there are some things left over, like some of those femurs, but most of it will decompose. Thanks, guys.
All right, and then Rebecca Crockett and our Resource Conservation District.
Hi, my name is Becky Crockett. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have any composting programs online. The Resource Conservation District is a board comprised of 7 farmers. Several of the farmers on the board have talked about the need to set up a more aggressive composting system. We do have a couple of farmers. Alexander Dairy is one, and we have another farm there that is actively composting right now. They can see the benefit of doing the composting process and then utilizing the material on their land. In addition to that, there's also the benefit of being able to utilize things like the bedding, old bedding that they take out of the barns, mixing that with any manures, and then as well bringing in chips primarily from South Coast Lumber across the border. The Resource Conservation District, because of the high degree of interest in farmers wanting to do more in composting, as well as what's happening as far as the fire resilience projects that are happening countywide. There's a lot of material coming out of the forest right now. There's an eagerness to get yard waste material out of people's yards for the purpose of fire prevention. With that, you have a lot of green waste that essentially needs to go someplace. A lot of it is currently being burned. There are chippers that are in multiple grant applications that hopefully will be delivered within the county in the next year. Once you have a chipped material, the question is, what do you get to do with that? You can only use so many chips in people's yards, so there is a goal to try to have community chipping events, mainly so we can collect the chips and use those with manures, bedding material, other things, and actually have a composting facility in the county. We're not focused on food waste at all. Why is that? If you have a large composting facility, windrows, etc., you don't want to have food waste enter into that for the fear of attracting rodents. There is the interest on the part of the board also to allow public disposal of green waste at these facilities if they get going. That would be clean waste coming in. Currently, if you take a load of clean waste to a transfer station, I think you guys charge $96, $97 a ton, which is probably about $20 a load. Interestingly, $20 a load is what they charge for these composting facilities in the Portland metro region. They charge a tipping fee, and they also charge a considerable amount of money to actually buy the compost that's generated from those facilities. So we know that economically this does work out. It's a matter of somebody putting all the pieces together. In the Portland metropolitan area, as I mentioned earlier, I was responsible for putting that program together. And it's a program comprised of hauler collection of yard debris waste. It's also includes people bringing loads of material to these facilities. The facilities didn't ask for any money to operate. They can make enough money based on the tip fee and selling the compost product that comes out of the facilities. So it would be nice if we could figure out how to get something like that online. There are people looking into it. I've made a couple of grant applications that have been received fairly well, but we don't have money yet. We do have a little bit of money, but not enough to actually get something like that online. The other thing I do want to mention, since people touched on the issue of biochar, sorry, allergies still, believe it or not. Biochar is something that the farmers are also very interested in having right here in Del Norte County. There's a biochar facility, or a facility that's a biomass facility in Medford. They generate biochar. There's also one in Humboldt County generates biochar. And it's pretty expensive. The farmers right now can't afford to buy that just at a retail out of that either one of those facilities. But South Coast Lumber actually has behind their mill about 10,000 semi-truckloads of chips sitting there behind their mill. We've had discussions with them. They're interested in looking at, right now in the state of California, there are incentives for small biomass facilities that can generate biochar as one of the resulting products that come out of that. The other focus of these small biomass facilities, of course, is to generate electricity or biogas. Up in Oregon, Coos Curry Electric is very interested in looking at the possibility of South Coast looking into one of these small biomass plants and actually utilizing the electricity, as is Del Norte County interested in looking at new electrical sources. Primarily, the small communities, believe it or not, are starting to become targets for data centers. A data center in either Del Norte County or in Curry County would suck up pretty much most of the electricity that's generated right now. So there is an interest by the electrical companies to look at that as an option, the small biomass facility. And we will continue those discussions. And it's kind of an exciting time. There are opportunities here for getting rid of this waste stream, as well as opportunities for people to have some industry. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Becky. So now we want to open it up to everybody in the room. I wanted to just say thank you to all of our presenters. That was really interesting to hear everything that is going on in Del Norte County. It's really easy to look around and be like, what do we have going on? So I appreciate you all taking a moment. And I know it was quick to share the amazing work that you're doing. And we wanted to open it up to everyone now. If you have any questions for any of the presenters, now is a great time to ask them. And then we have some questions for you as well, including what mix of backyard and community composting makes the most sense for Del Norte, what feels most achievable for our community right now, how we can support our neighbors, our gardens and schools, and to compost locally. Where we have strong partners, what are some of the strong partnerships that you saw today through those presentations, and what small scale systems could serve our community best right now? And or what training equipment and funding would make composting easier and more accessible? Or yeah, consistent and community led. And how do we want to ensure ongoing participation and effective contamination control is in place as well? So I know those are a lot of questions. We are a little bit behind schedule on our agenda, but I do want to make sure that we have time to hear from all of you today as well. If you can come to the mic, it would be really helpful just because the meeting's being recorded.
I guess just kind of speaking from like a community perspective and growing up in this area, I think something that definitely needs to happen is more education on what composting is, especially for the young kids, because I feel like if we can educate them from a young age, it'll, make it to where the community has more of that involved just in their backyard. Because I think, like for me, I don't know really anything still to this day. I'm 33 years old and still learning, and I know that it's something I need to do, but I'm like, how do I do it? Just implementing it at my house would be like the first step. And then on our larger scale, kind of doing it more community wide, just so that people, have more, knowledge on what composting is. So I think just starting that from a young age, like within the schools, is a good place to start. And I think that's something that we can collectively kind of participate and do together, collaborate a little bit more and start getting that ball rolling a little bit harder, I guess. Yeah.
I feel like that also lends the idea of having like composting curriculum that could be shared throughout the schools and across all of the organizations. Go ahead, Kevin.
So it may have come up already, but I think there's also a role for really, really high quality compost that's verified. It's something, well, actually, my son Declan is working with Alexander's and trying to create the capacity to inoculate with really, really good compost, which is harder to do than the mass scale, but still it could be used for inoculation. And I didn't hear about it. I mean, where it comes to food waste, I think I had the machine that I sent to you that you guys should maybe look at is a good, it would be a good scale for, I think, this kind of community to adequately take care of the tribes, the restaurants, and maybe even green waste from the grocery stores and things like that. And a role for vermicomposting, just a shout out that, that's another way to deal with food waste and people actually doing their own. If you don't have worms and you need some, talk to me. I'll give you a handful. But also for black soldier flies that just put it on the record, black soldier flies in a decade will be eating them, but they're amazing. They eat everything. They self-harvest and fall out on the ground. So I'm going to be doing one. Want the short version, right? Not I studied it for 6 months and tried to figure it out. So Elaine Ingham sort of pioneered this approach. It's called biocomplete composting, and it's all about intensely growing the right conditions for a variety of microbes to flourish. And if you have just a bit of this, you can turn it into an extract, which just means mix it with water and agitate it and pour it everywhere. And I know some of this was happening on Alexander's with some of the compost Declan and I made, but I mean, that's just a backyard thing. And it's not hard to do. I mean, it really isn't. And you get a cubic yard of this really, really high quality stuff. I'm also doing a Johnson Sioux bioreactor, which is another kind of a fungally dominant compost, which you don't even have to turn. And it a little bit, they say 1 quarter of that on a pasture can then boost the yield for 7 years. That's that much of the Johnson Sioux. So you're doing what a forest takes 1,000 years to do, but you're doing it in 3 months.
So I guess I'll jump in here quickly. Once again, Ted Ward, Director of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. Thank you so much for all the presentations. I've found this all to be very illuminating and inspiring to see all the good things that are happening. Couple things. Pretty clear to me that we will want to build on the community composting sites that we already have, and that we can already build upon the people who are already coordinating those sites. And so I'm thinking one thing that will come out of this will probably be a follow-up meeting to all of the coordinators of each of those community composting sites, because we all have an interest in using those as springboards for education, both for the people who are using those sites, but also as potential sites for teaching people about home composting, food waste reduction, depending upon the location, because some places are better suited towards outreach than others. But I think all of those lessons can help all of us who are trying to coordinate those things. To the extent that you have a community composting site that you're managing, and I already heard several good suggestions about things you need, whether that's an awning or a chip mulcher, because we are in the midst of this community planning process and we have resources to try to do this, consider this to be an opportunity for a very quick and easy grant program. So just give me a one-pager explaining what resources that you need to help build out your facility or make it more effective, and we'll try to fold that into the grant that we have supporting this community planning process. And then let's see. So those were the two main thoughts that I had at this point. As we're talking about municipal composting options and sort of centralized systems, while it'd be nice if we could have those things, there's always that interplay about what it is that's appropriate for our community and what we can afford and what's a good fit. And so part of what we want to do is build on what we already have. So that's why I think starting with those community composting gardens is a great place to start. And of course, then we're starting to talk with other partners who have anaerobic digesters and other things that we'll want to support as well. So thank you.
Are there any more questions or comments before we shift to our next process?
I actually have kind of a lot of follow-up questions, so let me just find them really quick. First, before I forget, for the UROC, I don't know if you guys are aware, but Josh Norris has a considerable amount of funding left over from the Klamath Palmas neighborhood, and that's a health initiative, so you guys should be able to get with Josh Norris, and he has to use it by a certain time. It's going to expire, so I get with him immediately. And then my questions were, have we sent out customers of Recology or Waste Management Authority, your Waste Management Authority, Ted? Yeah, solid waste have you guys did direct mailers asking which residents would be interested in participating in either community model or municipal model composting systems? Because if you do that, we can find out how many, because if there's a large push for municipal, which I think there would be, because it's a lot easier on people to participate in it. And then if we have to do a monthly fee, that can be offset by them getting the free compost. So they'll be like, cool, $30 a month, and I get compost, like 3 times a year or whatever. So I think that's a really good one. And then we already have some existing community ones. And then if you isolate the ones that don't want to participate, we could do mailers and invite them to the education, like what you were just talking about, for backyard or for the independent composting, and just do it. I feel like that's the most efficient way to find out how to get these up and running. And then also, did anybody look into the estimated cost for if we were to do municipal, and if we had to make that a monthly fee, which I think that probably would have to happen, and then how much would it be to get the bear-proof containers that they use like at the campgrounds and get them put in neighborhoods, like, where they have the big mailboxes already set up, why can't we just put a big old bare bin and then have somebody at Recology or somebody that's on the staff already or has staff, they can recruit someone to do just that and empty those bins. To me, it seems like that would make a whole lot more sense than trying to figure it out at individual tribes or individual community gardens, or having our already busy farmers try to do the municipal. I feel like it needs to be a partnership with our Del Norte County government, the Waste Authority, Recology, and the tribes primarily, because I feel like they have the biggest amount of resources, and then they have big groups of people already existing that they can reach out to. And then in that same question of research, did you guys actually research what the zoning and regulatory requirements for the municipal system would be, what the timeline would be for permitting? Because they have to come out and speak with you. If you talk to them early, they'll come and consult, so you guys don't have to figure it all out by yourself. It's not like no one's ever done a municipal compost. Didn't you say you did it already, Becky, in Portland? So I feel like we already have a lot of resources that we could get that up and running quick. And then the biochar, I'm super excited about doing the biochar. I don't know if something at the harbor, because the harbor's trying to get developers right now. I feel like that might be something we could do. I don't know if they can do that there, but I'm wanting to get the fish. If we're putting all that food waste and we're not utilizing it, that's industry right there too on top of it. And they need that really bad because we don't have a lot of economy at the harbor. I just don't know who would be the person to make that connection happen. So that was I was hoping somebody here might know. Because I don't know if the tribes, I've told them a lot to reach out to the tribes about developing, because they have a bunch of opportunities. So I'm not sure if they have. And I don't know if somebody here could reach out to the council at the different tribes to find out if they're doing anything with the harbor. So that was it.
Great, thank you. So we are at about 15 minutes. So we have an activity planned, and maybe we'll improvise a little bit because we were going to take a half an hour to do this, and we have about 15 minutes until the end of this meeting. But essentially, we were hoping to get some of your feedback, specifically splitting up into two different groups. One to discuss backyard composting, and one to discuss community composting, and then switch. So we would get your feedback for both. We welcome you to stay late if you have other questions that you want to add. And I'm just trying to think about the most efficient way to carry on this activity in our short time left.
There are two flip charts at the back. Is the other one underneath it?
And then there's one right up here.
Okay, so there's one up here. There's the backyard compost brainstorm, and there's the community compost brainstorm. So I think we will take 5 minutes, and you can go to the one that inspires you. Community compost there, backyard compost there, and you're essentially going to answer those questions. We have stickies and markers, so you guys can just talk amongst yourselves, brainstorm, write it down, get it up there, and then 5 minutes. You're all really smart. You've been talking about compost for 90 minutes. It's all in your head, so we're going to get it down, and then we'll share back for 5 minutes. And then we'll close for 5 minutes.
And then I'll just add, for the community composting leaders that presented today, don't feel like you need to capture everything here in this flip chart. As Ted mentioned, we probably will have a follow-up meeting with you all to really capture what your needs are. All right, ready, break.
Thank you. It was nice meeting you.
All right, everyone. I know there's some great conversations going on, and we're going to wrap up the meeting portion. And then if you want to hang out and keep talking, you can. I need one person to stay at each flip chart because you're going to share back some highlights. Yeah, and share back the highlights. And Scott, community compost. Backyard compost. Now you have to present from backyard compost because you're.
I don't know if we have time. I mean, we could. What other slides?
Or not share back.
Or we don't even need the slideshow. We don't need that.
That is being shared.
Okay.
I think maybe we'll share back with stuff.
Yeah, next meeting.
Okay.
All right, so if you were gonna share back, we decided we're gonna share back at our next meeting because we're so close to time. And we wanted to just have a formal closing of the meeting.
If you didn't get a chance to add your ideas to either of these sheets, you still can. They're stickies and markers, so feel free to add those before you leave.
All right, I am going to pass it over to Craig to close up our meeting. Thank you everyone so much for being here today. I feel like this is just the beginning. And we hope to take all of this information. Like we said, we will share back this information at our next community input meeting. But to just continue to build our composting program here in Del Norte and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you, Aya. Yeah, really good meeting. Exciting to see so many new projects starting, getting underway, having some speed bumps and some successes. And yes, this is happening in our community. I think our last task is to be looking for time for the next meeting. Do you have any input on that, Ted, Aya?
I guess just an update. So there are 6 community input meetings on for this process of deciding how we're going to plan for the next 10 years of solid waste management in Del Norte. We've got an extension on our timeline. So we are currently doing some food recovery meetings outside of this process. We have 1 to 2 more community input meetings, and we'll be scheduling those. We haven't scheduled those yet. We're going to be synthesizing all the information that we've gathered in the last 5 meetings and kind of coming up with some a draft report for you all to see and give input on. Do you want to add to that, Ted?
Well, I thought you summarized it pretty well, but I know these meetings can feel overwhelming. Depending upon how much expertise on the topic that is being addressed, there's just a whole lot of information. And it's a little hard to navigate exactly what does this all mean for our community and what's going to change. And so we are using these input meetings to develop a draft plan that then we're going to walk everybody through to try to get everybody's feedback to see whether or not this direction makes sense. But you can see that it will be building upon all that we're talking about. And once we do go through that analysis and we walk each other through that process, then I think we'll have a lot more to discuss. But this is ultimately building towards how can we manage our organic materials better, building upon the good work that you already have already been engaged in.
And just to add to that, I know it came up a few times in our discussion today around food rescue. If any of you are interested in getting more involved with food rescue, we will have an upcoming meeting in November specific to all of our food rescue organizations. And that's a little bit different than composting because the goal is to get that edible food to the people who need it. So if you're interested in joining that discussion, whether it is, helping food from the casino get to places where it can be food for those who need it, please get in touch with us. That next meeting is coming up on November 6th or November 12th, excuse me.
So the task force beyond these community meetings really doesn't have a essential reason to meet until we come up with the draft report. So, and I would anticipate that's probably the early part of next year, because we have some serious number crunching and pencil sharpening to do to come up with that draft report.
Yeah, and something that you mentioned that is in the works as well is a way to take some of these planning ideas that we have and convert them into actually see how much reduction of greenhouse gases will be achieved by each of these programs. And I believe that tool is still being developed.
That is correct.
That will allow us to take these plans and see the impact that they could have in actually meeting the goals of SB 1383.
Yes, and then there will be grant applications to actually make it happen. So it sounds like I jumped the gun in trying to schedule the next meeting. Please stay tuned for when we will reconvene and continue this very worthwhile effort. Thank you all.
Thanks so much,
We are
Craig.
adjourned.
Thank you, guys.